All right, let's get started. Good afternoon. Welcome to our second session on Behind the Numbers from Data to Dashboards. And my name is Ajit Gopalakrishnan, and I'm pleased to be joined by an awesome CSDE team here. Includes Renee Savoy, Corinne Felder, Ray Martin, Stephanie O'Day, as well as John Watson, I think, is hiding behind the scenes as well. So we have a terrific group of folks who work on some of this stuff who will be bringing our, as we were estimating prior to this presentation, over 100 years of CSDE collective experience on this call today, bringing you some of our background and knowledge about two important topics today. The Find Contacts Report and the Chronic Absenteeism Accountability Indicator. We can go to the next one. And the purpose of this series that we're trying out here, Behind the Numbers, is really to show you the sort of the through line from source data collection systems all the way to it becoming a metric and then turning into an accountability report or some other report on EdSight. We often get questions from folks like, hey, where did you get that data from? Or how did that phone number come into be? Or how did that percentage come to be? Why is this this metric showing up for my school and not that? Why is a different number showing up for a different school? So the idea here is to show you sort of that through line from what data are entered by districts or collected from somewhere else, and then how it turns into an actual metric. So today we did our first session a few weeks ago. We talked about the indicators, the accountability indicators that come from the teacher course student data collection, TCS. And we talked about college and career readiness indicator, PHI. We talked about on track to high school graduation, and then also the arts access indicator. Today we're focusing on one accountability indicator, chronic absenteeism. We'll get to that in the second part of this session. But we're going to start off with the Find Contacts report on EdSight. And we will discuss the data sources that feed that report. You see some of them listed there, the Educator Data System, Directory Manager, and Contacts Manager. Once we sort of go through that, a simple thing like a contacts report, there's a bit of nuance to it. And I think it's important to understand how those different sources actually feed in and then show up on this report on EdSight and what you can do to make sure your contacts are accurate, because it is important. The second part, chronic absenteeism. The source really is Public School Information System, PSIS, and the June collection in particular. We'll talk a little bit about indicator 4, which is the accountability indicator. But then, we'll also get into PSIS itself and show you the types of reports that are available within PSIS that should allow you to check your numbers during the collection window, so that by the time certification comes and then when the numbers are reported, you have full knowledge and confidence in what you have reported and what is ultimately being reported publicly and used for accountability. And we can go to, there we go. So let's start off with the Find Contacts report. So is your contact information accurate? Now, this may seem like a pretty basic report, and it is showing you contact information, but I can't tell you how important this contact information and having that information accurate is. We use it at the SDE to communicate, and probably some of you have been getting some of our emails that we send out to both district and school staff. We send out notices about grant awards that might be, or grant opportunities that might be available. We send that out to, it goes to the superintendent from the commissioner's office, but then we try to triangulate that and send it to others in the district, because oftentimes we hear superintendents are extremely busy as well, and they do their best to get it out, but sometimes certain messages don't reach certain people. And so we try to sort of follow that up and send it to other contacts, assistant superintendents, principals, assistant principals, school counselors, We have recently established a post-secondary readiness lead for post-secondary readiness matters. So doing that secondary communication has been really critical, because it's really about giving your district and your schools an opportunity to access resources. If we have those contacts accurately, we can do that. Um, and also the appropriate people get that information in a timely manner. These lists can also be really helpful for you to connect with your peers in other schools and districts, and to find out who are some of those individuals, and sort of exchange and share those best practices amongst yourself. So a simple thing like contact information is really important. It's very critical to our work. But what we're going to now show you is what's actually in the report and where it comes from, and what you can do to make sure that your information is accurate. And with that, I'm now going to turn it over to Stephanie to run us through this Find Contacts report.
Thank you, Ajit. Hi, everyone, and thank you again for joining today. We just wanted to start with a quick overview of how to access and use the Find Contacts report. So to access the report, you'll go to the EdSight homepage, which is edsight.ct.gov. And on the homepage, you'll see the top navigation menu. And the Find Contacts report is located under Overview and General Information. So once you're in the report, you can filter the list of contacts using the text boxes at the top of the page or the check boxes on the left. And in the list table, the table of results, you can double click on a record to send an email, or you can export the list to Excel using the button in the upper right corner. Just as a reminder, also on this slide, EdSight is updated daily, so you'll see any changes you've made to your data the following day. And here we've also provided a link to the report notes, which contain additional information. All right, moving on to the data sources behind the Find Contacts report. There are currently 4 data sources used in this report. I'll just provide a quick overview of these sources here, and then the following slides will go into more detail. The first source used in this report is the Educator Data System, or EDS. EDS provides the information on certified staff for the report. Directory Manager, or DM, provides information on system user roles. Those are roles like LEA Security Manager or Contacts Manager Writer. And DM is also used to populate the phone number and mailing address for the EDS contacts and the mailing address for Contacts Manager contacts. Now, while you don't see the mailing address on the screen in this report, it is included in the Excel download. Contacts Manager data are also used for this report for multiple roles that, again, will be outlined in a later slide. And finally, the Special Education Data Application and Collection, or CDAC, is currently used to populate the special education directors in this report. You'll notice that we've shaded this box differently to indicate a likely change in the source for this information being the special ed directors. With the transition to CT-SEDS, we will most likely add both the special ed directors and the special ed data contact information to the contact manager's application. We don't have a date for that yet. And now I'll pass it over to Ray Martin to discuss more details on how EDS is used in the Find Contacts report.
Thanks, Stephanie. As Stephanie said, I'm Ray Martin. I manage the Educator Data System as well as several other systems. The Educator Data System is the collection that we collect information on all public educators in the state of Connecticut, and everyone who's in a role that requires certification. Now, not all of them are in the Find Contacts report. Only just a small percentage of them. But this is where we get a number of roles based on their assignments, and we also in the EDS also collect the educators' emails, their work emails, so we can find that. So if you go into Find Contacts and find somebody who doesn't have an email there, it basically means that it has not been put into the Educator Data System for that person quite yet, but that will be coming. Move to the next slide. So what Find Contact roles are in EDS? You have your superintendent, including your interim and your acting, your assistant superintendent, your principal, including an acting principal, assistant principal, charter school principal or director, the RESC executive director, and school counselor. Now, on the Find Contacts report, if you search for certain roles such as superintendent, you will also get, just for expediency's sake, we're going to also give you the RESC directors and the charter school directors and principals, just because when you're doing that report, you're actually looking to find out who's the ultimate person in that district, and that's so we include all of those in there as well. Now, it's important to note, and as Stephanie mentioned, that EDS does give us, we get through the names and work emails for the staff there. But if you get a telephone number for like a superintendent or just even the name of the organization, that actually comes from directory manager. So that's just something to know. So if a phone number is something where your superintendent's phone number isn't their personal one, it's because it's the district phone number we have for them. So that next slide. So some critical elements for accurate data in EDS. Again, staff emails need to be updated and kept up to date in EDS. Or important emails just may not go. So if you have a new superintendent and you didn't put an email address, or you got it wrong, they may not be getting important information such as Ajit mentioned, a grant opportunity or an important deadline. So it's important to actually keep those data up to date and accurate. Also important is if you have staff changes. We're about to come onto a very busy season when it comes to changes, principals and superintendents moving from one district to another. So it's important when they actually leave, not early, not late, to actually update it right away so we actually know when. So we're going to send out information to the superintendents. It's to the right superintendent. It's not to the old one or somebody else. And then another point just to note, educator names come through EDS. They're actually from the educator's personal certification record. So if you have a principal or assistant principal or one of the other named groups where the person's name is not up to date, they got married, they got divorced, they decided to change their name for some reason or another, that actually comes from their certification account. So they personally would need to go into their certification account to actually get that updated. So that's one thing just to keep in mind. So if the name is wrong, it's because it's wrong in their certification account.
And Ray, if I can jump in here, just to add, I think Ray is emphasizing the importance of having emails for the roles that coming from EDS, right? And there are some cases where principals or assistant principals' work emails are not reported in EDS. So you can go to the Find Contacts report, look up your district, and you can actually look at all the roles that are in the Find Contacts report, and especially the ones that come from EDS. And school counselor is another one. We are now reporting school counselors in the Find Contact report, and there's a lot of communication. FAFSA information, the dual credit grant opportunity that was just launched. There are many things that we like to get to a broader audience, and so just please, if you look through that report and you don't see emails for some of those roles, you can add them in EDS, and then the next day they'll show up in the Find Contacts report. So I just wanted to put a plug in to get as many of those work emails in as possible within EDS.
Yes, thank you very much, Ajit. And so actually kind of nicely segues into the directory manager system. Directory manager has kind of two critical roles. First is the listing of all the schools, districts, school names, and educational facilities in the state. And then the second part is it is used to manage the users and roles for our portal applications. The Find Contacts report uses both the organizational information and the user roles portion. Now, the user role part, and on the Find Contact stuff, it talks about data collection staff, if I remember the term correctly. And if you click on that, it'll then show here are the people who have these different roles, including who your EDS users are. So if you look on the report as Ajit suggested and see, hey, there's two school counselors and a new assistant principal who don't have their emails, you then can look at, okay, who the EDS users and use that information to find out who in your district you need to talk to get that information put in. So that way you don't have to call us and say, oh, who I need to fix this. It's you can look up who do I need to talk to in the next office over and have a way to fix that. So go to the next slide. So what context find context rules are there? There's for directory managers, the directory certifier. That's the person when there's a change in grades or a change in school name, email, the website changes, phone number changes for the school, organizational information on the school. That's your directory certifier. The LAA security manager, that person is at the district level who actually manages who has rights to what applications. So if you need to get into TCS or any other application that's actually in the portal, that's the person in your district who does that. You have the TCS LAA user. TCS is the teacher course student application. There's EDS, and that has your certifier and your writer on that. And then also your contacts manager writer. So if some of your contact roles are incorrect and not up to date, you can talk to your contacts manager and they can know, oh, I have to go in and fix something or update somebody. To talk more about contacts manager, I'm passing it over to Corinne Felder. Corinne?
Hi, Ray. Thank you for that. So segueing into Contacts Manager, this application serves as a centralized resource for both CSDE and local education agencies such as yourself to simplify and streamline the collection of contact information. So the data is used to complete several requirements, including the Teacher Negotiation Act. So as you saw in the earlier graphic, Contacts Manager works with other sources to update that Find Contacts report in EdSight. So this can sometimes be confusing between all of our acronyms in Contacts Manager and the Contacts page. So all of us hope to step you through that today to make it less confusing. Next slide. As Ray mentioned, there's a Contacts Manager writer role. That's a mouthful. So the Contacts Manager writer role is assigned in Directory Manager by your LEA Security Manager. The person who has write access to Contacts Manager inputs the name of the various contact lists. So that person with that Contacts Manager writer role is entering the school nurse supervisor, the family engagement contact, etc. So this is where people sometimes get confused because the Contacts Manager writer is not the designee on a contact list unless explicitly identified. So you can write your own name if you're the Contacts Manager writer. Next slide. The Contacts Manager writer can easily identify which lists need to be completed as they are identified on the menu of lists. So on that right slide, you could see an item identified in red. So when the Contacts Manager opens this slide up or opens the screen up, they could click next to that red box and they could easily update any contact lists that are not complete. So in this particular case, it's the diversity, equity, and inclusion role that has not been assigned. The Contacts Manager writer can also view a list of all individuals within their LEA who have at least one role assigned. There's a reminder at the top of the screen that the diversity, equity, and inclusion role has not been assigned. So that's on your right slide. It's very small, but it says that it's missing at the top of that particular screen. So if there's an existing individual that should be assigned to that role, it's easy to just edit that record. You could see that in the very last column of the blue screen by checking an additional box for that role. There's also an option on the screen to add a completely new user to add any roles to. Next slide. So currently there's over 10 different contact lists within Contacts Manager, and there's more on the way. If you were to visit either the help site or Contacts Manager itself, you could find more information about the descriptions of these particular roles. And the link to the Contacts Manager help site is at the end on our quick links slide. So
I think Corinne is frozen, but it's my turn anyway. So are you okay with me going forward, Ajit?
Yeah, I think before we just jump on to that though, just to let's just pause here for a second. I think we've covered, and Renee, if you could actually scroll back to slide 5. I know it's a ways back, but I just want to sort of recap with that slide to just say that, we've shown you the Find Contacts report on EdSight, and then we've shown you the 3 main sources with CDAC, likely going away in terms of a source for the special ed director contact. But hopefully that's told you like where different things are coming from and where you need to go to fix your own contact if you don't see it right. So let's see, there's a question, and thanks, Katrina. So who in the district decides what is a school site? For example, we have school sites listed in my districts that are not really sites. They are programs. Now, this is a slightly different question from what we're talking about for today, but I will just try to answer that briefly. And the determination of what is a school is made by the local school district. So if there are particular situations that should not be schools, maybe they are alternative programs or special education programs and not really full-fledged schools, then the district can request that type of change. It is a big change, and it's handled in a particular way. But if you want to discuss that more, Katrina, suggest an offline conversation. There will be likely implications on a whole host of things, but feel free to reach out to us offline and we'll be happy to have that conversation. All right, Abby asks the question, are there future plans to integrate EDS with Directory Manager and Contacts Manager? Managing EdSight access is becoming too much as staff come and go. There is not a plan to integrate these particular systems because they serve different purposes and they have very different tentacles to each of them. Like EDS, because it deals with certified staff, is very closely tied in with the certification system. Directory Manager actually ties in with everything because it is the single source of truth for who accesses what. In terms of EdSight access, the simplest way to manage that is within Directory Manager. I'm sort of looking to Ray here to help me out. I believe you can go into Directory Manager and look at who are the people in your district who have either the EdSight secure district level role or the school level role. Click on them and disable those users as people come and go. And I totally hear what you're trying to do. Ray, did you want to add to that?
No, you're exactly right. You just go into and inside Directory Manager, go into, search your staff and just select the EdSight Secure application, and you can get everyone who's there who's active in there. And if there is someone who no longer needs it, you could go into their record and either remove it, or if, for example, if they are no longer with your district, just inactivate their account altogether.
And we don't actually check in Directory Manager user roles if the person has a certification when it comes to assigning access, right? It's really just a credential and whether they are able to access that particular system or not. Because there are people who may not have certification, who are support staff, et cetera, in your district, or IT staff who might be submitting data or accessing data. So it really doesn't tie into EDS per se. There was, going back a decade, there was a plan at before we had Contacts Manager to actually have sort of a list of those contacts that may have integrated within Directory Manager, but that never panned out. Now I'm talking like a decade plus old history, and the SDE staff know kind of what I'm talking about, but so that never happened. So we've created Contacts Manager to sort of handle these roles that exist. Yeah, we have many staff members to manage access for. So I mean, you should be able to see that list in there. One possibility that we could think about and again, I'm really talking off, sort of spitballing here, is to see if there's any benefits to making some connections that would help with user management. So Abby, we'll take that to see if there's some way that we can look at whether staff are employed in your buildings and whether they should continue to have access to systems like EdSight Secure. So we'll sort of take that behind the scenes to see what can be done. And directory manager is and Katrina asked, where can we find directory manager? It's actually accessed through our portal login, and if you have access to it, then you'll see it. If you don't, you won't. And your LEA security manager should be able to advise if you have access or not. And you can find the person who is your LEA security manager in the Find Contacts report. So a lot of terms, as Corinne was saying. So and we'll put the link to the portal login in the chat as well. Any other? Oh, there we go. Help site information. Wonderful. Thank you,
Angie, I just wanted to just kind of respond, if I could, too, to Abby. I understand the difficulty of managing all the users. When we send out an EdSight secure email, we do a cleaning based on the undeliverables that we get back. So maybe an option to help districts, Ajit, would also be more frequent emails from the eds, like quarterly emails, to just give an update, and then we can help manage as well. We have support staff who then reach out to the districts on all of the undeliverables or any of the out of office messages that seem problematic, something like I retired. So that might be a way for us to help you too. Maybe do like a quarterly outreach with just a summary of any changes, and then we can help manage those undeliverables, because I assume that we would receive an undeliverable or an out of office response from those who left your district.
Fabulous idea. I think that's a great idea. I think there is an email imminent going out to EdSight secure users very soon, right?
Yeah.
Right, about Indicator 7 student level report, and you guys are hearing a sneak peek on something coming out very soon. That's a great idea, Stephanie. Any way we can be helpful. Yep. All right. Thank you for your questions. Again, chat is open, so keep them coming. But let's transition. It's about around almost 1:30. So Renee, I'm going to turn it over to you to transition to take us into the next part, which is chronic absence, what it is, where it comes from, and what districts can do to make sure their data are accurate.
We have a definition of chronic absenteeism on this slide, but this is not new. This has been around for a really long time. We have chronic absenteeism data available on EdSight, public EdSight, dating back to 2011-12. So it's more than a decade of chronic absenteeism data available to all of us. So we know that chronic absence, as a quick review, is a student missing 10% or greater of the total number of days enrolled during the school year. And it's for any reason, excused, unexcused. It's about missing instruction. And I do want to, just for a moment, kind of give a little clarity to this example that's included at the bottom of the slide. And this comes directly from more of a programming or the program side of chronic absenteeism. And they say, for example, a student who has been enrolled for the first 30 days of school at the beginning of the school year and has been absent 3 of those days is chronically absent. I didn't want to change their definition, but I would like to add a statement that says, at that moment in time. That student is not necessarily going to be chronically absent based on all the public reporting, based on next generation accountability, because we need to look at the entire range of membership days as reported in PSIS in June, which we'll get into. So just keep that in mind. I've had some discussion with schools where they're really frustrated in the fall. They're like, this student has missed so many days and now they're chronically absent. What are we going to do? Well, we've got a whole lot more membership days ahead of us and more opportunities to have that student attending school. So don't be discouraged but the attendance data is important for monitoring and helping students get back on track for the remainder of the school year. So June PSIS, it is the only data source that's used for chronic absenteeism. I could say that like 3, 4, 5 times. I want to make sure that that comes through clearly. This is what we're using. And so there are two pieces of information reported to us through June PSIS, and that is the students' total days of attendance and the students' total days of membership in that school. So that's the attendance rate. So in order to get at chronic absenteeism, we look to students who have an attendance rate that is 90% or less. Those are students who are flagged as chronically absent. Again, these are students in the June collection. Any fraction over 90%, that student's not chronically absent. So you often hear people refer to the 180-day school year. So a student who's absent 18 days in a 180-day school year, and they were a member the entire time, that student is chronically absent. But many school districts have something more than 180, say 183. So if you miss 18 days and you have 183 days of membership, you're actually not chronically absent. Your attendance isn't great, but you're not chronically absent. And these data are publicly reported in EdSight really early in the school year. So this past school year, those June PSIS data, the chronic absenteeism calculations were run, and it was publicly reported around September 12th. So you have a really early view of what indicator 4 is going to look like. And if you let me get through the next couple of slides, Corinne's going to show you how you can get an even earlier view of what's going to be publicly reported through your access to PSIS and the reports that PSIS generates for you as a user. So indicator 4 is chronic absenteeism. So while we're reporting chronic absenteeism values on EdSight publicly in September, accountability reports don't come out until sometime later. So the indicator 4 results shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. You're getting a preview through PSIS during the submission period. You're seeing it publicly reported on EdSight in, say, September, and then the indicator 4 results follow later in the next generation accountability reports. I guess a couple of important things to note on this slide is that we look at chronic absenteeism for all students, and we also look at it for students with high needs. So it's a very important indicator, and there's quite a few points associated with it in the accountability system. But what's nice about, I think, not just indicator 4, but many of the indicators in the accountability system is it's often not an all or nothing situation. So you can see in that last bullet, we give all the possible points if the chronic absenteeism rate is 5% or lower, which I know has been particularly challenging in the last few years. And no points are awarded if the rate is 30% or greater. But there's a lot of wiggle in between 5% and 30%, and we award proportional points depending on where your school is for all students and for students with high needs. And this slide is just a visual of that last bullet. So you can see that we've got the indicator 4 points earned on the x-axis and the chronic absenteeism rate on the y-axis. And so as we go from 30% all the way down to 5, you see the points increasing as we go. There are quite a few business rules in the accountability system and in the calculation of chronic absenteeism in particular. And so these are good reminders. In June PSIS, every district is reporting the number of days of attendance and membership for every student. We saw that on the student attendance rate calculation slide. A student who withdraws before the end of school is not in the school's rate because they're not in June PSIS. So we're just looking at the June PSIS kids. Another important point that surprises a lot of people is that when a student moves in the middle of the school year and say they arrive in a school in December and the student arrives, you look at their records, you're like, oh my gosh, the student's been chronically absent, this is a problem. It's not that it isn't a problem, but the data, those data do not impact that receiving school because we're going to be calculating chronic absenteeism based on the number of days of membership in your school. So you're not inheriting this chronic absenteeism status. Certainly the student has attendance behaviors that are important and that need to be addressed, but the data are not going to be reflected in the receiving school's chronic absenteeism calculation in June. And although CSDE collects monthly attendance, this is an important point, that's kind of a newer thing that we've been doing since COVID. And we think it's really useful information to be monitoring those data on a very regular basis and see where people are and bringing more attention to attendance at the school level. When we are reporting or when we're calculating indicator 4, when we are reporting chronic absenteeism, we only use June PSIS. We are not using those monthly attendance files. I think that's an important point to remember. And so now the June collection, it's pretty important for this, and Corinne's going to talk about it.
Thank you, Renee. And I apologize if I disappeared abruptly before the power was knocked out, but I'm back. So first of all, June collection, the first thing I would like to let you know is that I am Corinne Felder. I'm not Kendra Shakir. Kendra Shakir manages the PSIS applications. However, I'm presenting this to you today. So June collection, tentatively we're opening June 5th. Our timely deadline is July 14th. Accurate is August 11th. And the freeze date that I want you to write down is August 18th. So no changes can be made after August 18th. I'm going to say that a couple times just so everyone remembers that. So prior to August 11th, PSIS district coordinators, so those are the people entering the data into the public school information system, should share the following PSIS reports with the attendance and engagement contact. Conveniently for this presentation, the attendance and engagement contact is in Contacts Manager and is listed on that contacts card that Stephanie showed you on EdSight. So there's 3 reports housed in PSIS to verify the accuracy of the absenteeism reported, the absenteeism data reported. So be sure to share these with the appropriate people. So we'll take a look at that first one. Next slide. Okay. So the first report is district level data. So this provides a quick look at where your LEA stands. Both the counts and the percentages of chronically absent students are displayed on this report, and they're also broken out by subgroups. So it's important to note, again, all of these are live reports. So if data is entered into PSIS, if data is deleted, if data is edited, and you go back and visit this report, those results are immediately updated. Next slide. The next report is similar to the previous report, except it's school level. It's also broken out by subgroups. And in addition, the prior year data is displayed. So that way you could see where you are in comparison to this year. So if you're a new user, this could be incredibly helpful because you'll know if there's been a drastic change. If you're trying to change your data because it was previously reported incorrectly, this could also be a helpful report. I'm also getting over a cold. Excuse me. So the final report is a student level report. So this one can also be viewed by school, so you can see the students within that school. So if your districts looked at those previous reports, the district level report and the school level report, and you notice the discrepancy, this is where you could drill down to identify the records that contribute to that discrepancy. So this report is unique from the other reports because you could sort it. So in this particular example, you may or not be able to see the total days of membership are all 180 for these students. But then when you look at the number of days in attendance, you could see it fluctuates everywhere from 5, I think, which is clearly a chronically absent student. So you could use this for student outreach as well to see which students might need some help. So some big takeaways on these slides in this PSIS section. Share these reports with the appropriate people. Upload early, which I didn't say before, so that we have plenty of time to make these corrections. Remember that the freeze date, after the freeze date, you absolutely cannot make changes. You want to meet this freeze date. And you're given plenty of opportunities to make those changes before then. Please look at these reports, use them to your advantage, so that way your data is correctly reported. And now I think we're turning it back over to Renee.
So just a quick review of some of the resources. I know Jennifer asked in the chat whether or not the slides will be shared, and they will. I will send them around to everyone who registered as soon as I have a link to the recording. So that'll take me about a day, but you'll have the slides and you'll have the recording. You can share it around with whoever you think might be interested, and that way you'll have direct links to these resources as well. So we've provided a link to the Contacts Manager help site, and there's a lot of valuable information there describing all of the different contacts that are populated through that application. Probably Ray's favorite link is the portal username reminder and password reset. So it's kind of a self-service site. So we'll make sure we get that to you for sure. Ray will make sure. And then EdSight Find Contacts, that's the public report that we were showing some on-screen displays, but it's kind of hard to see in a session like this. So we encourage you to poke around on that if you haven't done so previously. The Reducing Chronic Absence document, again, is more of from the programming side of chronic absenteeism, but can be a great resource. And then finally, the chronic absenteeism data, which if I were giving a quiz, what is the only data source that we use to calculate chronic absenteeism? That's June PSIS. You have these wonderful reports in the application that will help you make sure you got your numbers right. There'll be no surprises when we release data in, say, September-ish on EdSight, because you know what those chronic absenteeism numbers are going to look like. And then really no surprise when we do the next generation accountability reporting later in the fall, and those chronic absenteeism numbers are publicly reported. So you have early access, early ability to make adjustments and ensure that the reporting that we're putting out publicly is accurate.
Oh, thank you, Renee. And thank you, Corinne and Ray, Stephanie, and John for all your work to make this possible. I want to, if you don't mind, Renee, just a couple of slides back to the student level roster report for chronic absence, just to, I think Corinne made some really important points. I think that I want to sort of second, which is upload early. You know, the collection is tentatively scheduled to open June 5th. You know, it typically opens in early June. So when your school year ends, you know, try to upload the information so that you can actually get a list. You can actually know where how your indicator 4 measure is going to come out. And, you know, you can look at it by school and by district, and this roster is huge because then it gives you a sense of like, perhaps there are some mistakes with certain grades or certain classes, or sometimes with alternative buildings that maybe didn't submit their data. You know, use these reports to check all that in advance, so that come August 11th, the accurate date, and you know, I mean, the Kendra will be contacting you about validating, and Kari sometimes gets involved and communicates with the attendance leads as well. So please use these reports, share them with your school level folks, and so that they can review this and identify, because sometimes they know they're closer to the kids at the school level and they can kind of pick out situations that look odd. And sometimes 1 or 2 kids being off could be a sign of something systemic going on. And sometimes the people who are closest to the data can pick that up very quickly, whereas folks who are farther away from where the data are collected may not see it. So, you know, and we definitely aren't going to know that a particular situation is happening in a particular building or so on. We're going to just take it ultimately when it's certified and process it and move forward. So we're giving you these reports as a means of you being able to check these things before they're certified to us. So I think important points about using these reports. So please do that. I just also wanted to just clarify one other thing, is that, you know, all of this discussion around chronic absence here is as it pertains to indicator 4 and the accountability system. We do report monthly attendance, as Renee mentioned, and we do report chronic absence as part of monthly attendance. That calculation is a little different. There are some nuances that make that calculation different. For one, it's based on monthly data, so we're sort of calculating as we go, and things can fluctuate. How students are handled across districts also varies there. So what I would suggest is, that monthly attendance is really for and that attendance rates and absences that are reported there are really more for, program follow-up and support and the communities of practice, the Talk Tuesday work that Kari does, and which is awesome, allows you to sort of use near real-time data to sort of act on this, so that when it comes finally to the June PSIS, the end of the year view, you've hopefully caught all the monthly issues and reporting issues, so that hopefully the June submission now is cleaner. The other thing we do when we do that monthly reporting is also that we sort of freeze the prior year's data and sort of use the June data as the data of record for the prior year. So while we let the monthly thing sort of change during the year, once the year is done, the June numbers become the official sort of numbers for chronic absence that we use. And clearly June PSIS is the source for the accountability numbers for sure. And so that's what we use. Who is there with you at your school or your district at the end of on the last day of school? I mean, that's what June PSIS collects. So hopefully this is another session that's hopefully taken you behind the numbers and to give you insight of how we go from the data to the dashboard. That's really our goal with these sessions, is to help you see that through line. And in case you missed the first session that I mentioned at the opening, there is a video recording of that in link in this slide, and you should be able to click on it right now as well if you're on Teams. And when Renee sends it out as well, it'll be in the slide deck as well. Our next session, I don't see any other questions, by the way, so if you have any questions, you can also raise your hand if you want to orally ask a question. So feel free to do that too. As I'm wrapping up here, our next session is Friday, June 2nd, same time, 1 to 2. And if you haven't registered, please do so. We're going to spend some time on the post-secondary readiness report. This is our newest sort of data source that we've added to this report, especially around dual credit data that we've gotten from the colleges. That was a big change this past year. And so we want to take you behind those numbers and show you how the data we get from AP, IB, College Board, ACT, and our institutions of higher ed, how all of those multiple different data sources actually then get rolled up into this post-secondary readiness report and becomes indicator 6 of our accountability system. So we're going to take you behind the numbers on that particular report and indicator on June 2nd. Our contact information is on the last slide. Before we sign off here, are there any closing last-minute questions for me or for any of my colleagues here in the office? You can ask them in the chat or raise your hand and we can unmute you and you can ask your question. And I'll give the teachers wait time over here. All right. I think that's sufficient. I want to, again, thank you for joining us today. Appreciate your coming. And I want to thank Renee, Corinne, Ray, Stephanie, and John for helping put this session together. And we had a lot of fun preparing for it as well and presenting it to you. So thank you, all of my colleagues here at SDE, and thank you all for attending and have a wonderful afternoon.